Alright, in this lesson we'll finally dive into how we can deal with those pesky null values which have that NaN designation. So I'll begin by re-executing our cell to import our NBA CSV. And I'm going to show you the first 3 rows with the head method. And right now I'm also going to preview the last 3 rows. And that's just so that we get a reminder that the very last row within our data frame has all null values. So what I'm going to do here is call a method, and I'm going to call it entirely on the data frame. So I'm going to call the dropNA method, period dropNA. And what dropNA does by default is remove any rows from the data frame that have any null values at all. So when I execute this and take a look, you'll see that this row right here, John Holland, the row with an index position of 2, has a null value in the salary column, so it's not going to be present in the resulting data frame. And if I scroll down all the way to the bottom, you'll see that the final row, the one that has the entire row full of null values, has been removed as well. So by default, what the dropNA method does, we can see it right up here, is it removes any rows from the data frame where there is one or more null values. It doesn't matter how many there are. If there's a null value at any point during that row is going to be removed. And that's due to a criteria or a parameter within the documentation called how. You can see that the how parameter is set to a default argument of any, which means remove any rows that have any null values. Now the second argument that we can provide to the how parameter is all. Now what all will do is remove the rows where all of the values are equal to null. So if we re-execute this, we'll see that John Holland comes back even though he has a null value in the salary column. And the reason he's still here is because there are still valid values in the other cells in that row. Conversely, if we scroll down all the way to the bottom, that bottom row, the very last row in the data frame where we had the entire sequence of null values, that row has been removed because the dropNA method now removes it if all of the values are null. Now, as with many different other methods, this operation by itself does not actually remove the rows permanently. It just gives us a brand new data frame. And the dropNA method does include a Inplace parameter. You can see it right here. And if we set it from its default argument of false to true, that's actually going to overwrite the data frame that's stored in NBA. And so now if I take a look at the last 3 rows of NBA, you can see that that row with the null values has been removed. In addition, just a couple other options that are available to us. If I wanted to remove it in the other direction, so I wanted, let's say, to remove any columns that have any null values, what I could do is call the dropNA method, and we'll keep the default how argument, which is set to any, but we're going to change the axis from 0, which represents the rows, to 1, which represents the columns. And what that's going to do is remove any columns from the data frame where there are null values. So we know that salary and college have them. We saw that value for John Holland in salary in the 3rd row. And here we have a couple null values at the end of the college series. And you can see those 2 columns have been removed, as well as I think one more column. Let's see what else is missing here. Nope, I think that's it. So those are the only 2 columns that have null values within our original data frame. So college and salary have been removed. Again, not permanently until we call the Inplace parameter. And again, instead of providing 1, we can also just write in axis of columns, and that's going to perform the exact same operation. It's going to remove any columns that have null values. If we leave this axis argument or parameter blank, it's going to default to the standard, which is the rows. One last thing I wanted to showcase, let me just preview the first 3 rows again. So far we've talked about how to remove rows if any of the values are null and if all of the values are null. But what if we want to specify only a specific column? In other words, we want to remove a row if there's a null value in the salary column, but we don't care if there's a null value in any other column. So if we use the default NBA.dropNA method, it's going to remove it from rows that have nulls in either salary and or college. But we don't care about college, and so that any argument is not going to work like we want it to. The dropNA method has a additional parameter, and it's called subset. And the subset parameter can accept a list of strings, And in that list is where we write the columns that we'd like to check for our null values. So if I only write in salary, it's going to drop the rows wherever there's a null value in the salary column. That doesn't mean that it's going to drop in rows that have any null values anywhere else, only if those null values exist in the salary column. So when I preview this, you can see that John Holland has been removed right here from the right. He had the index position of 2, but he had a null value in the salary column right here, so he's been removed. Now there's still null values in the college column, so those rows have been kept because we did not specify those, or we did not specify the college column as one of the list values in that subset parameter. So those rows are still going to be kept. If we wanted to include the null values in the college column, we could add it as an additional value to our list that we give to the subset parameter. And now you see we're going to remove any rows that have nulls in salary and college. So at this point, it functions identically to the regular drop NA because we only have nulls in college or salary. But if you have a data frame with multiple columns that have multiple missing values and you only want to check in 2 or 3, you can just use this list design and feed that as an argument to the subset parameter of the drop NA method. So that's just one way that we can deal with null rows or rows that have null values. We can simply remove them from our data frame. And in the next lesson, we'll explore another way that we can deal with null values, which is filling them in with a pre-assigned value. I'll see you there.